This is the Legacy Wealth Code podcast, helping you build long-term wealth and a lasting legacy through real estate investing, tax strategies, and motivational stories from some of the most successful and influential people out there. Here are your hosts, real estate investor and entrepreneur, Michael Notbaum, and real estate investor and attorney, Andrew Hook.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. I am Michael Notbaum. I've got my partner in crime, Andrew Hook, with us on the call, and we have an awesome guest today, Ryan Butler out of Washington, D.C. Another guy I met at a mastermind. You're probably starting to see a trend here with some of the guests. You invest money in bettering yourself and bettering your business, and you meet some great people along the way. So Ryan is here with us today. He's got a retail team out of Washington, D.C., does about 300 units a year as a team for $175 million a year in volume. And as of late has started really shifting gears towards real estate investing, has 2 large apartment complexes that he's done as syndication deals, 2 medium apartment complexes, and a small one. So super excited to have you today, Ryan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to see you guys, man.
I know. It's been 3-4 months now since Scottsdale.
So long, right?
Getting ready to get our winter jacket. Well, I guess you're in Washington, D.C. I'm in Florida. So, we got, I think it was 84 degrees today. I played golf with some buddies. So it's going to be a little bit different scenario when we get up to Nashville here in a couple of days, but be good to see you and everyone else.
Well, it's better for me and worse for you because right now.
So let's jump. Yeah. What is it? What's the temperature there right now?
I don't know, but I have to wear a coat.
That's how you gauge.
That's all we need to know.
The thing is, you can't really gauge that in Florida because you wear a coat here if it's like 75, so you look and all the people from up north come down here and they're in the water in like January, and the Floridians are like, you guys are nuts. So definitely a different metric on what we gauge cold as. But hey, so let's jump in. You've got a super successful real estate team, and this whole podcast, when we started it, was really helping people build long-term wealth through real estate, which I think obviously we're in alignment on our beliefs that there's 100% easy path to building long-term wealth through real estate. Also creating a legacy. And one of the things that always drew me to you is the way that you've developed such a huge amount of business by helping friends and family realize that they could buy a property, stay in it for a couple years, and then you help them invest in another property that they might live in, rent that one, rinse and repeat every couple of years. And you've built an enormous business out of doing that, which to me, it's great that you have a great business, but ultimately I think you're building a huge legacy for yourself and helping people build long-term wealth. So tell us about that whole story and how it all got started.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we do for our clients, a lot of it is based on kind of the things we've done for ourselves, like me and my partners. And so what you see is like, man, this really works. Like someone else should do this, right? And then you're like, okay, let me help you do it as a client. Because what happens a lot of times is that you get into people buy a home and they're like, oh, this is my forever home, or they want to stay in it for so long. And there's nothing wrong with that from a lifestyle perspective. But if you want to build wealth on one of the simplest paths for wealth building, which is real estate. If you wanted to do that, there's just a path for that. And that means you got to move every couple of years, which creates some inconveniences. But the inconvenience is also where the wealth building is. So there's usually some form of greatness on the other side of like discomfort.
Right. And I think, you hit a good point there, because what you're talking about is the average Joe. You don't have to be some rich millionaire that's like, I'm going to invest in real estate and get rich. There's no question. You look at Donald Trump, he's buying buildings, skyscrapers, golf courses. But you're talking about, your Aunt Betty. You show her, hey, I can get you qualified for an FHA loan or a VA loan. And then a couple of years from now, we're going to rent this out. You're going to make some money on it. And then you're going to buy a new house.
Yep.
And do that every couple of years. Is that pretty much the strategy?
That's the strategy. And especially for younger people, it's like, hey, you're not married yet, or, you're starting to get serious. You guys should start buying your real estate separately. And then that way, by the time you get married, you have 2 properties. Your partner has 2 properties, 2 or 3 properties. And then you can buy a family home together and not have to worry about it too much because you've already done a lot of the wealth build. You've already done a lot of the legwork up front.
Right. And then it compounds, once you have 1 or 2, now all of a sudden even in up and down markets, I always say, like, you look at 2009 when everything was just, dropped out of the bottom. The houses right now, if you just held on, so you buy a smart investment that's cash flowing, right now it's worth more money than it was then.
Yeah,
And
but
those people thought it was the end of the world.
if you take that, what's the average price home in America right now? Like 400, it rose up to about 400,000, right?
Well, yeah, maybe. Like here, it's, what is it, Andrew? 354, something like that. And I think,
I think it's high threes
yeah,
and yeah,
Probably,
probably
but it's
pushing
pushing
fours
four,
at this
right?
point. So, but I'm sure where you
Well,
are,
yeah,
our
where you
median
are,
price
yours
is
is probably in
higher.
the fives or something, right?
Well,
Yeah.
our average sales price is about 600,000, and that we cover a couple counties. So Washington D.C. is extremely high, right? But then you go to some of the surrounding counties, and they're very normal pricing, kind of aligned with the rest of kind of the middle America as far as pricing. But my point to get to that was like, all right, you buy a property for, if your average home is $400,000. Maybe your first home is a condo and you do 200,000 or 250,000 or something like that, right? And then you buy that property, you live in it, and then in a couple years, maybe you buy a 2-bedroom condo instead of a 1-bedroom condo. And then in a couple more years, maybe you buy a 4-unit apartment building, right? And so you can do that at a very early age. And it's okay if you're not starting early, but we want to talk to people kind of at every phase of life. If you're 24, 25, you can do that. And by the time you're 30, you've bought over $1 million worth of real estate. And the easiest way to be a millionaire with real estate is to buy real estate and then wait for 30 years and have it paid off, right? And so like that is a sure path to become a millionaire through real estate, just like that. And that's not rocket science. That's literally buying probably 3 homes in most places, right? And
Right.
that's your real estate portfolio millionaire. And then you can go do it in some other buckets like stocks and bonds, mutual funds, financial instruments as well. But just on the real estate side alone, and some people say, well, hey, look, I don't make a lot of money. My family doesn't make a lot of money. So what? Okay, you don't do it in 2 years. Maybe it takes you 5 years. Maybe it takes you 10 years, right? Maybe you buy a home every 7 to 10 years. But if you're starting, even if you're 30 and you're starting, like, you're still going to be able to leave a legacy by buying those homes every 7 to 10 years and keeping those properties, right? And if you sell them, maybe you get a bigger home that is awesome for your family, and it makes it easier to manage the payments. But what it gives you more than anything is flexibility and optionality. You have options, and like options are good.
Right.
That's what it boils down to.
So when you say options, you're saying you're building almost like a passive income stream that'll allow you the flexibility to say, I can choose that I don't want to do this job anymore, or I do want to do it, or I want to do something that I'm really passionate about versus what I just do every day. You don't have to be 100% real estate investor full time.
Nope.
You could just slowly invest in real estate and build an enormous amount of wealth.
Slow and sure. And what I love about real estate more than anything is I see it as a defense mechanism. Like most people thinking about the wealth building, it's like, well, how does it help me? The 2 largest costs in America, they are healthcare costs and housing costs. And so if you buy a home, you have multiple properties, and say you don't have a lot of income from your 401k or anything else like that. If you have a paid off home and a couple rental properties, I'm not saying you're in the best position, but you're going to be in an okay position.
Right.
Right?
You're in a better position than most.
You're in a
for
better
sure.
position than most because you don't have a mortgage. Plus, you're bringing in another $2, $3, $4,000 a month, right? That you can really live off on, and that's from making a couple smart investments, 20 years back, 20, 30 years back.
I love a lot of what you just said, and a couple things in particular. It doesn't have to be a complicated process, right? It's just keep it simple and go by the basics, and here's your roadmap. I mean, that's such an awesome message to drive home for people. And I think, there's so many people that are scared about, how do I get started? Or they're overwhelmed by that question, what's the best way to do it? Or where do I divert these dollars? But, I love the fact that you just keep it simple like that. And then, the other thing too that you brought up, and I wanted to kind of touch base with you on your history, is you don't have to have started this at 19, 20, years old. This is something that you can pick up no matter where you are in your life. And I know, the interesting thing about you is that you had a career before real estate, and you have a different background. And a lot of people that we talk to who have been wildly successful in real estate have started that as their primary career path, but it doesn't have to be, right? I mean, you have a different background. You came from something and you've utilized that skill set to help you excel within the real estate industry, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I came from a software engineering background. My degree from college was in computer science. So I'm not going to say a nerdy little tech guy, but I knew that was a path that was a growing industry and I can make some money even if I wasn't the best in there, right? I was like, even if I wasn't the best, it's a rising industry. I can go down there and have a nice career, make some money, and then take my money and invest in real estate. And that's really what I was doing, was taking my money from where I was living, from the career I had, and then, poured it into real estate. And so what's interesting about that is, and you guys know this, the money that you need to buy your first couple of homes is nominal compared to what you might need if you want to do investment properties down the line, right? Because they're primary residence. So the fact that you can put somewhere between 0
Sure.
and 5% down on properties, like 3 or 4 of them, right? Just because you're moving from one to the other. Now you can put 20% down or you can put 5% down, for example, right? But 15% is the cost of doing business. Meaning, like, if you want to buy the property as an investment, you put 20% down. If you don't, you have to move into this new property, right? That's the cost of doing business for only having to put 5% down. So that's kind of how I think about it.
What you're saying, what I was about to touch on earlier was just that. Like, we do this podcast, and sometimes just from being in real estate, we just assume a lot of people know about real estate or about the things we're talking about. And I just think back sometimes to when, before I got into real estate, and I always saw people investing in properties. I was like, man, I'm doing pretty well for myself, but I can't imagine having the kind of money to be able to invest in real estate.
Yeah.
And I think, like, the point you're making is that you can structure it in a way that, you might have the inconvenience of having to move every couple of years, but you can position yourself to be a real estate investor with 0 to 5% down. And that's huge. I think for most people, they probably never realize that they can become a real estate investor with little or no money out of pocket.
Oh, yes.
If you're renting, you're probably moving
every few years anyway.
Every few years anyways too, though. That's the other thing to remember. Yeah.
But through all of this, though, the main thing to note is going to be the difference is comfort. Because you're moving, or because you bought your home, most people buy their home, and they're like, man, I used to move every 2 or 3 years, and I don't have to do that anymore. So you get comfortable. Whereas you can still move every 2 to 3 years and have a little discomfort up front for the next 5 to 10 years, but it's going to pay off dividends later in life. And that's just a really hard concept for a lot of people to keep in mind, because that comfort of staying in a home that they bought, like, it's nice. Who doesn't like comfort? But going on the other side of discomfort.
People don't like change, I think,
in general.
Just by default, people don't like change, right?
Yep, 100%.
So when you meet with someone and you're pitching this to someone who, they're a school teacher or they work at a factory, they're making 40 or 50 grand a year, and you show them that, hey, you're going to qualify for a home. What's the path that you present to them? Like, okay, let's just like map out 10 years or 20 years. What do you show them that's possible? And you've actually implemented it as well. So you've shown them it's possible, and now you're actually seeing what you presented actually come to life.
Yeah. So what I really focus on is, some people will come to you with money raised or money saved, right? So my first goal with clients is to make sure they understand there are a lot of programs out here for real estate first-time home buyers. And the government encourages people to buy. That's why there's so many programs. So take advantage of the money, become a partner with the government, take advantage of the grants that they give you, and limit the out-of-pocket expenses that you use on your first home. And say you saved, $15,000 and you're like, I'm going to put this towards a home. Depending on the market environment, you might be able to get a first-time homebuyer program and then lean on seller closing and you're coming out of just a couple $1,000s. So you're able to keep, I don't know, 10, 13,000 of that, right? And now you can save another 2 years, and now you have 26,000. And that when you have 26,000 in 2 years, you can buy another home. You won't be able to use those first-time home buyer programs anymore, but now you have a little bit more money to put 26,000 towards your second home. And just like that, you've taken advantage of the financing opportunities within real estate through your first purchase and your second purchase.
Right. And like the Fannie Mae program for investment properties, like if you're buying a second home, as long as I think it's, a lot of people say 50 miles, but as long as it's in a different area, because I was actually having a conversation with a mortgage guy the other day, and he said, even if it's in a town that might only be 1 or 2 towns over, so the 50-mile thing doesn't work, but you're in a mountain area and where you're looking has a lake, you can justify that second loan or second home program. So now it's only 10% down, and you can have an investment property in an area that has, as long as it's a different lifestyle than where you live currently. Like if you live in Florida and you buy another home 15 miles away, but it's also on the beach, doesn't count. But as long as you're buying in what they would classify a different lifestyle zone, you can do the 10% down. So, I mean, like to your point, there's so many different options for people to be able to invest in real estate. And then you compound that, and then you start getting into some of the bigger deals, which is what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, and to that point, I would say, here's how I think about it. If you had 25 years to invest in real estate, right? I would spend the first 5 years with primary resident investing. You buy your first property, that's year 0, and then you buy one every couple of years, right? Great, now you've done a good job with that. The next 5 years, I will look at doing second home investing, where you can put less than 20% down. You can put 10% down. So if I can put 10% down on a property, and you either do short-term or medium-term rental there, and I can still utilize that property for vacations. Now I do that a couple times, right? That's 10 years worth of properties. And within those 10 years, I bought 3 primary residents, and I bought 2 or 3 vacation homes. You follow me so far? So those like 5 to 6 properties. After that, you can go to, if you want, you can go to doing just straight investment properties. Now you're putting 20% down on properties. And then you get to a point where you got a nice cash flow coming in. You spent your wisely over the last 15 years, but you don't necessarily want to be so active in the real estate business. You want to pull back and slow down a little bit because you put a lot of work in, right? And you've reaped the rewards. So now you can start taking those cash flows and investing passively in a lot of ways. So the reason, and kind of bringing that full circle, so I like to buy apartment buildings. To me, the combination of group economics and the options of either being very passive or very active in a deal gives me, I'm really interested in those types of deals. And so what I found was, like, my grandmother, for example, loves my real estate apartment deals. She's like my biggest investor. I mean, she's not my biggest investor, but she's invested in all of my deals though. And it's not like $0 to get in, right? But it's so fun because she loves the cash flow she gets from investing in these deals. And if she had not done smart investing earlier, that would have been more difficult for her. But she invested smartly earlier, and now she just puts her money in these things, and now she's getting this cash flow passively. And all she ever, if the check is a day late, or something like that, I get a call from grandma saying how, where's my money, grandson? Did something happen this month? What's going on? So, but that's just kind of, to me, a full life cycle of real estate investing. And when you end up with a legacy, properties you can pass down, properties you can sell off for retirement, still getting cash flow from passive investing. And you just evolve as a real estate investor as your time goes on, your money increases, and your options increase.
Well, what's funny is that we've had, multiple conversations at different masterminds, and you put things so simply, and then yet at the same time, you say things that are like extremely profound. So I think the average person can take from what you're saying. Like, so let's just go back to what you just said, the 15-year thing. Mm-hmm. Your average price point is $400,000, right? Mm-hmm. So 3% or 4, let's just say FHA 3.5% down. Mm-hmm. What is that? $14,000 roughly?
Yeah.
And in this market, you can actually get closing costs. Mm-hmm. So you got to, you save up $14,000 today and you buy your first property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 15 years from now, with that same amount of money that you started with, you're talking about having 10, 12 properties and being in a position to say, I either want to take it off the table and be a passive investor, or I want to, double down and start being more active and buying, like your grandmother's on the passive role. You're on the active role on the apartment.
She's reaching 80 years old, man. I think she's done with her active days,
No, but I mean, that's so you're at a point where, 15 years from now, anybody that can save up $14,000 can look back and say, I'm a multimillionaire, with now the flexibility to choose whatever I want to do with this money. If I want to be active and really double down and start doing big deals, or passive, I'm going to give my money to Ryan and I'm going to let him buy apartment complexes, and just sit back and collect checks. That better be on time.
They better be on time. That's the key. the right amount and on time.
I mean, that's an awesome,
don't be late.
Like I said, it's just Ryan, simple, but it's awesome.
Yeah. We tried some.
It's such a cool platform.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And it's, genius. I don't know how you came up with this.
I didn't come up with
That's what's crazy about real estate. It's like, you don't have to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. You don't have to create a website that has the logistics of shipping stuff next day all over the world. Literally, it's just about saving up 14 grand to buy your first property and then rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic, man. I love it. And I think one of the things I really try to do with people I talk to is to simplify it, because the transaction is large. And when things are large, you add more zeros, we tend to add complications to it in our heads, even when there might not be. So the fact that, hey, look, here's a 30-year real estate plan for you, right? And if you really talk to, you're like, oh, this makes sense. It's just that most people don't think 30 years from now, right? And they don't think about along the path, what would I like to be doing? How would I like to be investing? How does that change as I age? How does that change as my income increases? People just don't think about it, because most people are looking just to this year, right? But you might have to go through a couple years really tough by making those sacrifices to invest in yourself and invest in your family. And then a lot of good things can happen later, because otherwise there's a lot of bad things going to happen later too. So you might as well make a little bit of sacrifice now and have a lot of good things later, because it's going to suck either way. So,
well, and one of the things that I think over the last probably 5 or 6 years that's totally changed, Andrew and I's life, and several investor clients and friends and family that we work with and are close with, is the whole tax end of it. So now you're talking about showing people a way to not only build wealth through appreciation of an asset, not only build wealth through positive cash flow that, at some point could replace whatever you're making at your day-to-day job, and you could just do that. But on top of it, there's so many government incentives from a tax perspective that really, you can supercharge your investments, which is one of the key things that we try to teach everyone. And it all started with, Brett and Brian a few years ago talking to us about the cost segregation, bonus depreciation stuff. It's such a game changer when you look at it. And I think a lot of people sometimes look at the rich people in the world and say, oh yeah, they're not paying taxes, but that's not for me. Those aren't things I can do. Mm-hmm. And they are. They're, I'm sure you're teaching it to your people, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And, from the real estate business standpoint, the first thing you really try to teach people is to invest in yourself and learn how to increase your dollar per hour, right? So your dollar per hour, how much you get paid an hour. The best return on investment is investing in yourself to make yourself more just intelligent around money, both how to create it, how to save it, how to invest it. And each one of those are 3 different avenues, right? Create it, save it, investing. And so you need to learn how to create it first. You need to learn how to save it, and then you need to learn how to invest it. I think it's important to kind of think about that, because what usually happens is people say, I'm making as much money as I can. Let me save it and then let me investing. And that's totally a good path to do. If I had to pick one, I would pick that one. But then there are people who are learning to make a lot of money, particularly in our industry, but they don't know how to save or really invest. And that's a struggle because at some point they won't have the energy or the time or the mental capacity to do some of the things that they do right now. So they might not be able to keep that income that they have at the moment. And so that's why you see even older agents leave the business, successful ones. But you'll see them say, hey, it's gotten too hard. I've been through hard again. I didn't like it then, and I'm too old now. Right. So you'll see that.
Well, it's always amazing to me how many agents that are real estate professionals by trade and don't own any real estate.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but I assume it's probably at least over 50%.
Oh, I would definitely say over 50. I mean, and then the ones that do it, they'll have a home, which is awesome. There's nothing wrong with having one home. But considering you're in the business, one would think that you would have more than one.
So when you started in real estate, your first investments were single family homes? Did you follow this same process that you're talking about?
I didn't. I stumbled upon this process because of the mistakes I made. So, I lost.
That's usually the case, right?
Right. So, God works in mysterious ways. He made me a genius. He made me feel like a genius the first part, right? So I bought this house. I'm going from being a tenant to my friend, one of my roommates for one of my football teammates from college, and I'm paying like $650. It was not a big, that was a lot for me back then, but in the grand scheme of things, I look back, I say, man, that's pretty cheap rent for me. And then I buy a house through a first-time homebuyer program, and then I rent out all the rooms. I think the kids call it house hacking these days, right? But I was just getting roommates back in the day. And I went from, minus $650 that was coming out of my account to like plus almost $2,000, like it's somewhere between $1,500, $2,000, right? So I'm making like $1,500, $2,000, not having any money out of pocket. My mortgage was like $1,500. Like, man, I'm a genius. Like, I'm 24. Like, this is awesome.
Your asset is appreciating.
The asset, like, I figured it out, guys. I figured it out. Since I figured this out, even though I only did one property, I'm going to go flip properties now. So I started flipping properties, and then I made more money. I was like, man, I am a genius. And then, at some point, it caught up with me and I lost my shirt. I had to take my shirt off, leave it at the job site and walk off. And so I lost a lot of money, about 150 grand over the next 2 years dealing with properties that I tried to flip and really turn into a developer without having the support, the education, or even the wherewithal of really knowing what I'm doing. And so that really stopped me in my real estate tracks. So this is not me. The reason I say that is most people think like, oh man, this guy's been doing real estate forever and ever and everything he's done. And I had to recover from that. I had to go and make a bunch of money, pay off all my debts. And I just did that through my salary job and just living very frugally and paying people off like a month at a time. Like, just here's a check this month. Here's some more this month. Getting the construction jobs finished, selling one of the properties, renting and refinancing one of the other properties out of the hard money lender. So it's just like a whole rigmarole, right? And then after I finished all of that, I still wanted some more punishment. I'm a glutton for it. But I said, this time I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it a little bit better, right? So I ended up, got to a point where I could sell that property without taking any more losses. And I went from like doing, 4 or 5 properties within like a 2-year period for a flipper. And then I came back to my first property I bought. I was back to that property. And then I looked and I said, here's what I'm going to do. This is a safer method for me personally. Flipping's great if you need to generate income. I just can't. I'm not very good at it, so I don't do it. And then it was really buy and hold investing. And I utilized the techniques that I'm talking about right now. Buying primary residence, I bought a vacation home. That vacation home got me into a location. I looked around. I liked this location. So I started buying multifamily down there, small multifamily.
And that was your first small apartment complex. And then you bought the medium-sized one and then the medium-sized one. And then you said, okay, now I got enough people that have trusted me over the last couple of years. Let's do a big apartment. And now you're closing on another one. You said next week?
Yeah, next week. Expected to close next week or within the next week. That's going to be 100 units, paying like almost 7 million for it. So it's definitely been a path of growth for me in this regard. And at each level, it's like learning something new. So I'm not like perfect. I'm not some person that's been doing it for 20 years, but I've just been able to my past experiences and particularly my losses into something that's useful now to help me avoid mistakes that I've done in the past.
Well, I love that though. I mean, that's what it's
Ryan,
about.
out of curiosity, on your syndication deals, what's a typical makeup of number of investors? Like how many LPs do you generally bring into a deal? Do you have a kind of a secret sauce with that, or is it just vary on the deal?
Yeah, so I don't have a secret sauce per se, but what I like about these deals is the people who I am excited to invest with. That's where I think a lot of the success comes from. So most of my clients or excuse me, most of my investors are either clients or they're my peers. These are people that I'm in relationship with already and just in constant conversation. And what I found was some of my clients, they buy 2 or 3 homes and they're like, Ryan, this is great. And I like what I've done, but I don't want to do this again. So they said, how can I continue to invest my money in real estate, which I like, being a lot less active? So my clients actually forced me to get into multifamily, which most people might not even realize that part of the story. But they kind of forced me into the game. Like I was interested in it, but I needed to do something with my clients to keep them building wealth. And it's like, what better way than to be in a good partnership, right? So then I said, okay, great. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn about this apartment stuff. And then after I learn about it, I'm going to come back to you and we're going to raise some money and buy some property together. And they were just gung ho about it. So most of my investments are somewhere around 60K on average, if you average it out. So it's a little bit more here, a little bit less there, but 50, 60K is the average investment that people make. Some of the deals are smaller, like there'll be 25K investment, which a lot of people can make. But I think a key part of that is these are friends, these are families, these are peers. And I want them to be involved in these investments because I want their lives to be better. Yeah, I could go to I just had a meeting with a friend of mine. He said, Ryan, why don't you just come to me and get $2 million and we can just do the deal together. And I said that didn't really align with my purpose though. My purpose is to help my community, be the bridge to my community for all things real estate, lifestyle, and wealth building. That's the mission for Coalition Properties Group. And, I'm being the bridge to them. They wouldn't historically have access to that kind of thing because they just don't know. People who don't make millions of dollars don't know how business works in that type of situation. So,
well, and I think most people wouldn't ever in a million years think that they can be an owner of 100 and something unit apartment complex for $60,000.
Yep, and that's a big part of it. Right, you hit that right on the nose. They didn't think they could do it.
Yeah. Well, and including me before I got into real estate. That's what I'm saying. Like when I looked at people that have all these things, I'm always thinking, before you really understand financing and how all that works, you're thinking, man, that guy must have so much money if he owns that.
Yeah.
And realistically, if it's a syndication, he might only have a fraction of it, but a fraction of a lot of properties is really good. It's like, why not be part of that? Especially if your goal at the end of the day is to be more passive than active. It gives you such a great avenue to build wealth and not have to have a huge role.
It's hard to have 2 active jobs or 2 active businesses at the same time because you only have so much time in a day. I think as you get older, you just kind of appreciate that concept that I only have so much time in a day. And if I split my time between 2 jobs or 2 businesses, I'm not going to be so good at, both of them. So let me be a little bit
unless
more
you're
passive.
Elon Musk.
Well, I still, I don't know.
I know.
Right.
The jury's out on that one.
The
right?
jury's
The jury's
basically,
out on
he's
that
done
one.
a fantastic job, but he's, the jury's still out running 2 companies. If anything, I would say probably, what's the guy from Twitter? He's probably the guy that did the best because he did Twitter and he did, and he did,
Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey.
Jack
did
Dorsey.
Twitter and then he did Square.
That's right. Yeah. And both of them were, obviously Twitter's successful. Square is everywhere.
Yeah, Square's everywhere. It's pretty good. He's done a pretty good job.
But Elon Musk, though, is managing Twitter and landing space shuttles on like a barge out in the
Is
ocean.
he really
And yet,
managing Twitter though? I think he's just on Twitter. I think he's
definitely
just
managing like who gets to have an account or not.
well, he's doing
He's
that,
the chief
but
twit,
like,
I think now. Isn't
yeah,
that what his title is?
he's Twitter thumbing over here like, I don't like you said that. You know, people. He probably has a bunch of bots sending him messages in his DMs of people who's like mentioning his name and talking trash, and he's like, "Oh, this person's account getting disabled."
Gone. You're gone. That's funny. Well, hey, Ryan, I appreciate you being on today. Andrew, you got any other questions for this celebrity?
Celebrity.
I don't, Ryan. Thanks so much for coming on and giving some insight. And again, I mean, just love the way that you simplify this and your purpose and your mission, or, you know, it's humbling, and it's also refreshing to see the good that you give back and how you help people. And so keep doing what you do, and, you know, we'll be rooting for you, of course, the whole time. So
Hey,
yeah,
man.
let us know on the next one. We're in with Grandma on the next apartment.
Appreciate it, guys. Hey, love you guys, man, and I'll be seeing y'all soon.
Yeah, man. We'll see you in a couple of days. But thanks for being on. And everyone, this has been the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. Until next time, onward.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe now and never miss an episode. Until next time, onward.